Welcome to another conversation in People in Fundraising. This podcast features interviews with nonprofit professionals who discuss their career journeys, lessons learned, and enthusiasm for working in fundraising. And here's your host, the founder of People in Fundraising, Tim Wilson.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Season 2 of the People in Fundraising Nonprofit Conversations videocasts. Today, I'm really excited to welcome Bruce Berg to our program. Hi, Bruce.
Hey there. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure, Bruce. I want to begin by saying congratulations to you, because by the time this interview airs later in May of 2023, you will have been awarded the Ann Castle Award from the New England Development Research Association, NEDRA. So congratulations on that. I'm happy for you. It's a great honor for those of us who know NEDRA and know past recipients. So I'm just pleased to see you recognized.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bruce and I connected years ago when I was just out of college and working on Val Roberts' prospect research team at Harvard Business School. And Bruce was literally across the river in Cambridge, Massachusetts, working for the Central Harvard research team. And before we recorded, I shared with Bruce that one reason why I wanted to have him on the program today is that when I was starting out in prospect research, there weren't a lot of men who were higher up the org chart at their various nonprofits doing prospect research. And so I looked to Bruce and thought, well, there's an example of someone who has been in the field for a while and has found a path up on their team. And I thought that was an encouraging sign. So whether you knew it before today or not, Bruce, I looked to you as a good example. So I appreciate that.
Good.
Now, the other reason why I wanted to have you on is you had a very different beginning of your career before you got into nonprofits, where you worked with symphonies and philharmonic orchestras. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that and then how you got into prospect research in the nonprofit world.
Well, actually, I always wanted to be a professional percussionist. That's plays drums and stuff in an orchestra. Did my undergrad degree at Oberlin, my graduate degree at the Cleveland Institute of Music, which is part of Case Western Reserve. Spent a year in Germany doing postgraduate work.
Wow.
And then spent a year with the New World Symphony, 2 years with the New World Symphony down in Florida, Miami Beach. And then spent a year as the principal percussionist with the Hong Kong Philharmonic.
Oh, wow.
So I've always been involved with nonprofits, just hasn't been higher ed. It has always probably been performing arts, right?
Yeah.
So that's how I got started. And, decided to come back. Where were we going to live after Hong Kong? It was right around the handover to China. A lot of people were leaving. We decided we were going to move to either Boston or New York. We moved to Boston, and then getting started was really hard. Freelancing as a musician, really, really hard. So I actually started at Harvard in the development officer as a temp for a fundraising team. I think the reason why I actually started there was because with the New World Symphony, with my time in Germany, we were always kind of raising money, either through direct mail campaigns, either directly for myself so I could spend a year abroad, or in the case of the New World Symphony, one of the jobs I had in summer was actually selling sponsorship ads for local businesses, right? So that kind of got me in the door, I guess.
Yeah.
So that's how I started. And I have to say that my first manager at Harvard was Valerie Anastasio,
Awesome.
who to this day, is someone I rely on for a lot of questions and answers, and point me in the right direction.
Yeah. Oh,
It's interesting.
terrific. And then as you were temping in the development office, how did you hear about prospect research, or what if you were exposed to other sectors within that, what appealed to you about prospect research?
Well, the appeal, well, I think the appeal is, and it still is the appeal today, is kind of the quest, trying to like solving problems, figuring out where information lives, if it's good data, how to manage that data, all that stuff. That was really interesting to me. Um, Less so working with fundraisers, but fundraisers are a big part of it, but they give you the direction. And I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed, um, uh, uh, trying to find that nugget of information. And I have to say that, my years as a percussionist in a section of musicians, particularly as principal percussionist, where you're responsible for renting the instruments, assigning parts, all that kind of stuff. I didn't know it at the time, but it had a lot to do with what it's like to manage people.
Oh,
And led to this idea that, you manage people, and you have people on your team, and you help them along. Their job is to kind of do their best. You're not doing it for them. You're just kind of helping them along. So,
well, that's an interesting synergy. I like that.
yeah.
And yesterday marked your 16th anniversary at Northeastern University, where you're the senior director of prospect development. And
Yep.
I wanted to ask Bruce, given the career you've had and the tenure at Northeastern, and just the longevity in prospect management field, what developments stand out to you in terms of having the most profound impact on your day-to-day responsibilities over your career journey? Is it, portfolio management, the online access to information, those golden nuggets you talked about?
Yeah. Well, day to day I actually think the day to day is actually about the amount of data that's available, and most of it is not very good. And I would actually say the Googleification of information.
Yeah.
It's so present, and it's not necessarily actionable, but it did let everyone who has a computer or a phone or smartphone find their own information, or do a certain level of research. And I actually think that the term research has been kind of diluted as well, where research used to mean very in-depth. Now it just means I looked perhaps on a website, or I gathered what information someone wanted to give me, not necessarily, I mean, when we started in the field, in the industry, there was Nexus, and it was a dot command. We were much better at searching then than we are now.
Yeah.
So probably data management, probably systems have changed a lot. There wasn't really a database approach in the early days. And of course, the data moved to the use of data for analytics and predictive modeling and those sorts of things. The most recent thing is probably prospect management. I actually think I spend more time on prospect management than I do on the research side of things these days.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Same for me.
Yeah, the churn has to be, and providing systems and strategies to, get the most out of a prospect pool, or move on and reassign, or segment them out, stage them for better fundraising, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious, as a follow-up, Bruce, you mentioned the Googleification of information. What's your experience been, whether mentoring or training younger staff who've grown up with instant access to information on the smartphone to do the actual work of research and prospect management?
Well, that's a good one, because I hadn't thought about that. The newer researchers that we've brought on board, we of course bring them into, the pay for tools that provide not only a wealth of information, but accuracy on the information. I think a rule of thumb for me has always been, if you pay for a resource, it's likely to make your accuracy go up and your time doing the work go down.
Yeah.
So selling, Google's good for some things. It's great for biographies. It's great for some things, but it's not good for everything. It takes probably for a young researcher, a month or two to realize, oh, wait a minute, it's not all Google, or it's not all, a search engine like that. Yeah.
And I remember in my earlier days, in prospect research, like we had Yahoo and Ask Jeeves and maybe even still Alta Vista. So like we were comparing which search engine was actually better. And then, Google came to predominate around 2004 or so. But basically kind of the same approach to doing research online if you didn't have access to vendors. So now it's just a monopoly with Google for free resources.
Right, and I actually see the proliferation of data that's not all good data. I mean, more data does not mean better. More does not mean better. Anyone who's done a wealth screening lately, there are more data points than you can. You always have to kind of with a informed eye realize what data is good and what data is not, and then the duplicity of data. You will have, if you ever did a vendor screening amongst 3 vendors or whatever, you'll see that they have different takes and all of that stuff. So
yes.
We end up having a lot of data providers that it looks like a Venn diagram. There's an overlap on all the data, and some of it is a sweet spot. Some of it's like, I don't really think I'm going to use that part of it.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Sorry to throw that follow-up question at you. Sometimes I surprise my guests, and it's not all scripted right here. So, I wanted to ask you, Bruce, again with the Ann Castle Award at the NEDRA conference this week. You've been involved with NEDRA for so long, and you served as treasurer for many years in the mid 2000s, and that's just from your LinkedIn bio. I don't know exactly your tenure on the boards and such, but I just think, again, seeing people like you give back to the profession has been really motivating for me. And I wanted to read a quote from the social scientist Arthur Brooks. I use him a lot in these conversations. I wanted to ask you, before I read his quote, to think about your experience being a volunteer, giving back, in this case specifically to NEDRA, but perhaps to other volunteer affiliations you've had. Just think about what those experiences have been for you, what motivated you to be involved in those realms, and then what you think about this quote from Arthur Brooks. And so he says in an article about give your money, give your time, don't tell anyone, which I'm going off a little bit on his subject matter because we are going to tell here.
Right.
His quote is, giving away your expertise, energy, and affection can provide large happiness benefits. Researchers have found that volunteering directly improves happiness. So again, in your experience as a longtime volunteer, what motivated you and what have you gotten out of those experiences?
Well, first of all, it's always better to give than receive. It really is. And I'll say, I love Arthur Brooks. I don't know if you realize he's a recovering French hornist who was a professional musician before he moved into social science, or that kind of thing. I guess volunteering started with NEDRA when I started working for Valerie Anastasio in the mid 90s. I was the person who was responsible for typing up all of the membership directories for NEDRA. Believe it or not, I just had that horrible memory. It wasn't a horrible memory, but it was then. Why did I volunteer? Because someone asked me to volunteer. And and I was not only the treasurer, I was also the guy, like I mentioned before, with the New World Symphony. I was the person who was responsible for selling sponsorships to help the bottom line of NEDRA. I think the real benefit is to be in a position where you can give back and you can, provide your expertise and support for nonprofits or whatever. I often say that as my role became, I started at Northeastern at Harvard as a rank and file researcher, kind of like you did it I was actually a staff assistant, kind of like you did at Harvard Business School. And the more I moved up into a management role, the more I wanted to give back and support other things. That's a large part of why I started Donor IQ, which is a very, let's call it boutique, let's call it very small consulting thing I have on the side. I don't do much work, but the fun of that balanced out some of the harder days of the management role where, sometimes, it's hard to get something done. I'll say one thing I love about doing research and giving back is that it's an immediate reward. Management isn't always an immediate reward. If you look, with a long horizon, you may see or change happen, but giving back is immediate.
I love that. That's great.
And it's not hard, and it's fun, and it's a tactile function where a lot of what we do is not tactile. It's work a day. I'll say that. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, just speaking from my experience, when someone approached me years ago about serving on the NEDRA board, and I thought, oh my goodness, like me, why? Like I looked to people like you and Dina and Valerie Anastasio and many others, and I thought I am not in their league at all. But it was Amber Countess who interviewed me about why I wanted to serve on the board, and Tim Enman from Western Massachusetts actually recommended me. And I just had this moment of like, I'm flattered, but I don't feel like I belong in that club. But I agree with you, like it helped me really expand my mindset about giving back and having to structure my workday and my personal life in ways that would allow me to give back by serving on the board. And that has been just so beneficial as a lesson learned. Yeah, definitely. I want to follow up. We talked about giving back, and it's better to give than receive. One of my questions for you, Bruce, and I ask other guests as well, is just any experiences you've had as a donor that stand out as very meaningful for you, and what about that experience made it so?
Well, let's go back a little bit. So I was a scholarship student in both undergraduate and graduate schools, meaning there was a donor behind funding that. Scholarships and donors made it possible for me to attend I was a Tanglewood Fellow for a summer.
Oh wow!
I remember meeting my donor. He ran a now defunct chain of toy stores in Boston. I mean, I had never been to Boston before. And even as a member of the New World Symphony in Miami, that was funded in large part by the Carnival Cruise family, the Aronson family. It still is. So I've always had a connection with the donor or been the recipient of someone's largesse or their gift.
Yeah.
And all those things, what they did for me was provide opportunity, right? Opportunity to explore or to figure something out, or spend time with, I don't know, Leonard Bernstein, Anastasio Ozawa, and
Wow.
Tanglewood or whatever.
Yeah.
So my philanthropy probably impacts arts organizations more than educational organizations or the educational organization programs around that. And right now they're really pretty much within my family circle. Like, so what schools do my kids go to? Where did I go? What impact? It's kind of giving back into that small realm right now.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, it's all meaningful. I mean, I haven't made a gift and met my sponsor, my scholarship student. I don't know if that's ever going to happen, but I support those programs that supported me or that I think need support. I would say the pandemic actually caused a lot of reevaluation of who needs support and what my role is in that. I mean, probably a lot of people have had that.
Yeah, definitely. How did it impact you specifically to reevaluate?
It made me a much more thoughtful donor instead of, there's some donors like, I give this much to the whoever every year. And, in November, December, they make their list of who they're going to give their money to. It made me reevaluate the organizations that weren't struggling and and those that were, very much so. And I think our perspective is a little different because we see what's going on behind the scenes. We know if the money has an impact or the volunteerism has an impact. We know that.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of donors don't know that. So
yes. Yeah. I agree with that. I think just knowing people in my personal life where it's like, oh sure, click a button and I'm done giving. Not a ton more thought beyond that. Or I've donated for a couple of years here, so I'll keep going.
Right.
I think I think you're right that working in this industry gives us that insight into the process and how well the process runs at different places
and the value of your donation, I think.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. Well, Bruce, we have about 5 minutes left. I mean, it's crazy to think a half hour has almost already gone by. I wanted to see if we could get your insight, and I wanted to tie it to your music background and skills there.
Okay.
It's a quote from famous jazz musician Miles Davis. And he said that sometimes you have to play a long time to be able to play like yourself. And I don't know Miles Davis very well, but I loved that quote. And I just wondered if that resonates with you at all, and other specific moments, or you mentioned Valerie Anastasio a few times, where people saw talent in you and helped you to bring along those skills.
Where did I hit my stride? I think that I haven't. I'd like to say yes, but the answer is no. I think so. As anyone who works in like a complex, multi-tiered organization with a lot of tendrils can tell you, hitting your stride only lasts one fiscal year.
Yeah.
Right. And I think if we talked about hitting our stride, I think what's the lasting impact would probably be a better question. So I think, we're always positioning ourselves, to kind of make the most of the next opportunity from a fundraising stride. But stride in the larger sense, like it's all about probably creativity, ingenuity, problem solving, a lot of problem solving. lot of finding out who can help you do what you need to do, and to build a team that can support what that is. So yeah, there's no stride, but maybe looking back, there was like, oh yeah, we did build a function that, helps us with process. There's a foundation, right? I think some of our work is always really foundational. I will say this about Miles Davis, because I know about Miles Davis. He changed musical styles throughout his whole life. I don't know what he meant he hit his stride, but he played bebop, he played hard bop, he played jazz, he moved into pop music. He did Michael Jackson covers. He did avant-garde. He never stayed the same.
Awesome.
I think his motivation was probably more about money, but he may have hit his stride multiple times in multiple genres of music. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
I admire people like that. And as I've thought about, what guests I like to have on the program, I've sometimes thought about those musicians like David Bowie, who I love his work as it is. And as you look, right here, you can't see it too well, but like, this is the little CD album cover of Ziggy Stardust in the 1970s. Yeah. I really admire people like that who do explore outside of where the foundational genre of whether it's music or painting, things like that. And granted, they have the luxury of resources and riches that come with turning their tremendous skills into fame and being accustomed to people saying yes to them as well. But I think that reinvention, and like you mentioned with Miles Davis too, like of just challenging yourself to keep going. And you mentioned here about, in your career, like all the different developments, and still there's that hunger of, where do I need to go to find out this information? And now the challenge, as you talked about, is sifting through a lot of not so great material to find the small bucket of really worthwhile, actionable intelligence.
Right. It is about reinvention. And I'll say this: when I moved to Northeastern from Harvard, what hooked me was Harvard does everything the same way. It's a machine. They have it down. Don't you want to come somewhere? Don't you want to come to a place that you really have to think on your feet? You really have a lot of, and I don't know if that's really the case, but every day is a lot different here. Sometimes frustratingly so, but it is.
Well, that's good. I think it's important to challenge yourself and to get to a point where you can acknowledge this has been good, but I'm ready for something different. And so for you, going from Harvard to Northeastern sounds like that fits the mold there.
Yeah. We call it entrepreneurial, but it just means it's another word for chaos sometimes.
I like that. That's a fitting end to the conversation. Okay. Well, Bruce, I've really enjoyed reconnecting with you. It's been over 5 years since I left New England, but I looked to you as an example, whether you knew it at the time or not, and just value knowing you and knowing that you can make a rewarding and challenging, insightful career in prospect management and research. And also, I think to do it with fun and to do it with a sense of humor. And one thing I remember now as I'm talking about that is either Paul Massari or I used a job description from your team, and one of the qualifications was a sense of humor is a must. And did that come from you?
I remember it floating around there. I don't know. I don't know if it's still in our job descriptions here, but I'm sure other duties as assigned is on our job descriptions here, but sense of humor, I think that's a necessity, certainly.
Yes. Yeah. So that's another takeaway from watching you. And I think it's so valuable. We have to find joy and fun in the work that we do as well. So kudos to you.
I agree.
And again, I'm just delighted for you to get this Ann Castle Award at the NEDRA conference. So congratulations.
Well, thank you. It's a surprise. Maybe it means I've been around too long, but we'll see.
Excellent. Well, Bruce, thank you for your time today, and thank you for making this an insightful and fun conversation.
It's my pleasure. It's nice meeting you again. And
Yes.
Next time you're in town, look me up.
Certainly will. Absolutely. I think I'll be going out to Boston twice a year now. My parents are still there, so I definitely will make time on a future visit. Keep you in mind.
Awesome.
So you can find, for our viewers and for Bruce, you can find Bruce's interview on my website, peopleinfundraising.com, as well as on LinkedIn later in the month of May 2023. And appreciate everyone's support of this nonprofit conversation series. Have a good day, and we'll be back with another guest soon.